Today we're going to make a desk out of plywood and 2x4s. The majority of this desk is made out of 2 sheets of oak veneer plywood from Pure Bond. I'm going to make my cuts with a circular saw using a piece of trim clamped to the plywood as a straight edge. I'll be posting dimension drawings of this project on the Homemade Modern website. I always make sure to put 2x4s underneath the plywood so that I don't nick the floor with the saw blade. For the crosscuts on the narrow pieces, I'm just going to use a speed square instead of taking the time to clamp down a straight edge. When I'm making these crosscuts for the shelves and the desktop and bottom, I'm trying to cut the boards directly in half so that I get pairs of pieces that are the exact same length. Once all the plywood was cut, I can now use these same 2x4s to make structural supports for the desk. Now these 2x4s were a little nicked up, so I just sanded them with 150 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander. I wanted a place where I could hide all the charging boxes and cables for my laptop and phone, so I placed some blue painter's tape and then measured a door that I can lift out of the desktop. I used the inside of the cardboard roll and the tape to define the curves, drilled a hole through the plywood, and then cut out the door with my jigsaw. I then sanded around the edges to make everything smooth. I've been having a lot of fun experimenting with color so far this year, and we're trying out this Varathane wood stain in Vintage Aqua, and it is awesome. You can still see the wood grain right through it, but it's just a very contemporary, cool color. We applied it on really thick with a foam brush, waited for 3 minutes, and then rubbed off the excess with the grain with a clean rag. Once it's completed, this desk is going to have a lot of corners and edges that would make it a little bit difficult to apply the stain evenly, so that's why we elected to stain the pieces first. This 4-foot by 4-foot piece is going to be the back of the desk, and I'm going to glue and screw 2x4s to it that will support the desktop and shelves. I used 2-inch long finish screws, being careful not to screw all the way through the back of the plywood. I then flipped the plywood over and drove in 3 screws from the back just to make sure everything was fastened in nice and strong. I then screwed together the smaller pieces of 2x4 using 3 1/8 inch long finish screws. Jesse and I placed the desktop, which has the hole cut in it, and then screwed through the plywood and into the 2x4. We then screwed in the short pieces of 2x4 before adding in the bottom of the desktop. I screwed the plywood to another 2x4 to start the assembling process of the lower shelf. I then screwed this shelf to the plywood back, making sure to keep the top of the shelf lower than 12 inches. This way I can drill a hole through the back and access plugs through the plywood. I screwed on the bottom shelf and was ready to add in the side panels. Plywood can warp a little bit, and since these plywood panels are also serving as the legs for the desk, it's helpful to have a second set of hands to just kind of hold everything into place while you drive in the screws. For these side panels, I'm just using 2-inch long finish screws. I used my speed square to check and make sure that I was screwing into the edges of the plywood and not missing. Now the desk is fine the way it is, but I want to add one more upper shelf. And this time I want to hide the 2x4, so I just screwed another piece of plywood over the face of the 2x4. I clamped the 2x4 to the back just so I could set a nice reference point, pushed the new shelf up against the back, and then screwed it into place. I don't want the door for this little hatch to fall in, so I just glued a couple scrap pieces of wood to the underside and made sure that they stuck out about 1/4 inch. I then drilled a hole in the bottom of this little cavity for a plug, and now I can hide the plug and the charging boxes. You could make this cavity underneath the desktop as big or as small as you want, just depending on how many devices you want to charge. We then took some wood putty and covered up all the screw heads, and then once that putty had dried, added just a little bit more stain to completely hide them. Now that we've gotten the exact color that we want, we don't want to change that color or make it more yellow with an oil-based finish, so instead we're going to use Varathanes water-based polyurethane in crystal clear matte. This is an extremely durable, low VOC finish that in my experience offers the clearest protection for colored woods. This is a very simple build that can be made with basic materials and just a few power tools, and I also like how it can be situated to create a private little work fortress. When you're sitting inside, you're struck by like how much interior surface real estate there is, which is, if you're like me, it's great because you have a lot of room for post-it notes and physical reminders or even a calendar or something like that. It also might be a good area to put in some acoustical paneling if you record a podcast like I do with the Modern Maker podcast. Be sure to check it out. Or maybe you just hang something over the edge of the plywood. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Another thing that I've been toying with is whether or not I should put cup holders in. You know, I've spilled coffee on keyboards way too many times, and so I'm starting to think that there should be a cup holder, but I'm not really sure if that makes sense or not. So let me know your thoughts. Anyways, thanks for watching. Check out some of our other videos. We have a whole bunch of actually other desk videos available. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.